All right, good morning. You can hear us okay so far? So far, so good. All right, well, thank you for the introduction. It's incredible to be out in this room. We had that welcome this morning. I wrote her name down, Grandma Kim, and I had the honor of meeting her at the back just briefly before she left. I just thought it was an incredible reminder of why we're here. And then, Robert, you talked about home. And I think home has really resonated with me as I've grown up in the area, but more than a geographical area, understanding what home means as a person, as a human, as a son, a father, a husband, what home means to me. And I think, it really resonated again, talking about how it's not about the technology, it's about the connection. It's about creating home. Because at the end of the day, we have incredible panelists, and they're going to introduce themselves when I'm done my TED Talk. The idea that what we create and the jobs that we have, the careers that we hold, the positions that we do, it's all just part of the journey, but the stuff that's really important to us are the people that aren't even in this room. I feel really overwhelmed thinking about this, because what this room is doing is creating something beyond an award-winning community. It's creating something for our kids and our grandkids, and the way we honor the past. We have someone like Grandma Kim up here, and Robert and John, they took a moment to honor mentors, friends, people who've been a part of this journey. So at the end of the day, it's the human experience. Didn't intend to do any of that. I just wanted to host a panel and get to lunch. But it was something that I felt was really, really important. And sometimes we get in this mode where we just go and we focus on our job and we have our checklist and we forget, like, the human part of us that moves us to do the things that we do and reminds us, like, yeah, I'm gonna, the mayor stayed up till 2 a.m. planning. It's not because she loves those meetings so much. It's because she's passionate about what she's doing. And so I thought maybe that would be a bit of a backdrop as we dive into this, and maybe it'd inspire some answers that were not quite what you'd planned as we dive into this, because it's very easy to do some textbook answers, and those are a little bit less fun about the challenges and the successes that we face when we do projects like this, because they're long-term and they're big and they're challenging. So without further ado, would you take a moment to introduce yourself and share with the room, what brings you to the panel this morning?
Thank you, Travis. Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for the openness. My name is Tara Sutton. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a project lead with Stiletto Make a Point. So I'll tell you a little bit about who we are in just a second, but maybe I'll just start with who I am and what brings me here today. So I grew up in Toronto. Don't worry, I'm not going to go way far back. This is the hospital I was born in. No. So I grew up in Toronto. I now live in the city of Guelph. And Stiletto Consulting, whom I work for, is based in Fredericton. So I have the great pleasure of traveling to our East Coast just as often as I possibly can. And with my job, I travel both virtually and physically to really be in community and be with the folks that we service. So it really does come down to people. I'm very fortunate to really have that as my primary job. So Stiletto Consulting is a strategic research and planning firm, and we really sort of work at the intersection of government, academia, and industry, and help communities to develop, innovation and sometimes structures and frameworks to really drive innovation. And, circling back again to the heart of all of that is really people in community, and being really able to meet people where they are. So what brings me here to the panel today is that I know we have done actually work with some folks in their communities. Most recently, we have worked with Durham region on really their continued investment in being an intelligent community and the kind of formalizing of a framework and partnership to continue to evolve that journey as an intelligent community. So that's what brings me here.
Awesome. Thank you, Tara.
Great. Thank you, Tara. Thank you. And thanks, Travis, and thanks everyone for being here. I really love kind of the people-centric theme that's starting to come out of this. So my name is Chris Gillis. I am the manager of applied research business development at Durham College. And funnily enough, what does that actually mean? And recently, just at a family get-together, I've had people in the family, even my daughter, comes up and said, "Dad, I know you work for Durham College, but what is it you actually really do?" Again, so one of the fun things about applied research is I get to work with a lot of really interesting people and collaboratively within the college and with a great team here, and certainly into the community. We do a lot of work there. And fundamentally what we do is we find typically small or medium-sized businesses that have some sort of technical challenge, and through our amazing hubs in our Office of Research Service, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship, we actually provide technical type services for them and also inject students into these projects. So these are really amazing work, sort of integrated learning experiences for these young people that helps them kind of move out into the work world. And so I think what brings me here today is in that role, besides sort of general outreach into the community, looking for companies and people to do that sort of work, I also have two interesting project portfolios. One is I have the Center for Craft Brewing Innovation, which doesn't bring me here today, but by the way is in the lower floor of this building and is a really kind of a fun portfolio. But then I am the lead at the college for the Durham Regional Technology Development Site, which of course has to do with the adoption of electric, connected, and automated vehicles. And we have a partnership with our Spark Center, Ontario Tech U, and of course the region of Durham. Thanks.
Savanna.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today and talk with this panel. And I'm very excited to learn from the two of you. I think when you sent the questions through and looking at the conversation we'd have, I thought, I'm going to learn a lot today, which is exactly why we're here and part of why we love the Intelligent Community Forum and this group so much, because we do learn every single day. And it's something that we can take back and we can actually apply. So I'm Savanna Myers. I'm the Director of Economic Development, Tourism, and Culture with Grey County, which is a county about 2 hours north of here. And this is my little group here from Grey as well. And one of the things that I find so inspiring about the job that we get to do in economic development, tourism, culture is that it really is always working with our people, and it's always trying to do better for the people that we have in our community and building that home. And having culture tied in with that and having that people aspect, we really think it is about building that experience of the everyday life. So it's about making sure we set the environment and making sure that we have the right people at the table working together so that we don't leave anybody behind. And that, I think, is the best part of my job and why we really, really love to be in that area. And I think that's what brings me here today, is being able to explore further and learn more and see who else we can bring to the table, because we're so much stronger when we are working together. And why duplicate and waste resources when we don't need to? So that's why I'm here today.
Awesome, thank you. First question, is there a project that you have been involved with that uses a partnership framework, and can you tell us about that? So I know, Chris, you have put your hand up for an answer there.
Okay, we'll share those around.
Bit, okay?
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. I would say, and I would again want to talk a little bit about the Durham RTDS, as we affectionately call it, and really what we've done there. And this is really a kind of a hindsight thing. When I kind of thought back about what we've done here, it's not like we sat down with this framework and kind of planned this all out. This is really kind of looking sort of back over things. And I would say really what happened, or what was in place maybe, is that I think the first thing is that people like to do work, like to collaborate with people they know, they like, and they trust. And so what was really kind of interesting in that is there was, in fact, a precursor in the region to that. We call this thing the Durham Economic and Entrepreneurship Development Forum, or we affectionately call it DEEF. But it was there, and I think that became kind of a critical sort of space to do that, because I think as part of know, like, and trust, then you go, well, how do you actually do that? And one of the things that comes to my mind is something I like to kind of talk about is the law of the farm, which sounds a little bit strange here, but when you're trying to really develop relationships and know, like, and trust, you really need to do that intentionally. And I kind of see that a lot like farming, where there are steps you got to go through to actually kind of decide what crop, plant, fertilize, all that good stuff. And really that DEEF meeting did that. It allowed that to happen sort of naturally. And then what resulted from that were sort of common themes of areas of interest. And I think that was one of the key things that allowed this Durham Regional Technology Development sort of site, this partnership, to actually come about. And now we're in the, 5th, 7th year of this thing, moving forward. So it really kind of, I think, those three things: the know, like, and trust. You've got to, have a facility to intentionally work on those relationships, and then you need areas of common interest and a thread to work on.
Is there any part of that partnership framework that has since been formalized that you would duplicate or replicate into other partnerships? Is that, like, would you say that it would be valuable to consider it as a model to implement? Because you said this was hindsight and kind of naturally evolving. In hindsight or going forward, is there parts of that, not to make it really formal, but that you go, hey, this is a framework that has brought us success. Here's something we can implement or talk about up front, right, to kind of create some of that momentum for other projects?
There probably will be now that we talk about this, and I'm interested to look at the Intelligent Community Forum website and see what the key components are there. But we probably ought to actually think about this. I mean, one thing we did develop in this is we have a community readiness framework that we are trying to actually use with various local communities to talk about the adoption of electric, connected, and automated. But maybe we'll work with something in there. But anyway, I guess that the answer is we should have something. I don't think we do right now.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump in on frameworks, or because sometimes it can get over formalized and it almost restricts movement going forward, but then nothing, letting go of stuff that you've learned to apply to future can also seem like a bit of a missed opportunity when you have had that learning. So just any other comments?
Yeah, sure. Just a quick one. I think that it snowballs as we go, right? Where we learn something that we can then apply somewhere else that maybe is completely disconnected and unconnected, but there is something that we can bring value to and bring it to the table. And the other side of any kind of partnership framework, I think, there are so many of them that exist in so many different spots, and it's our job to keep sustaining those and to keep that momentum going, because you never know when you need to pull this framework and these people and these people. And it's so much faster and it's so much more efficient when you already have those partnerships and those relationships outside in that rapport, and that you trust the people at the table and that you can bring them for a certain circumstance that maybe you're not realizing outside of that. So I think it takes a long time, but really honing and keeping that rapport is really important.
Awesome. Thank you.
I totally agree. And I think, I feel like, Savanna, one of the pieces that you mentioned that I'll just build on a little bit is that idea that, that curiosity and openness to learning, I think, is what can keep a framework flexible to some extent, because I think when you have an openness to learning from the experience and input of others, it sort of necessarily requires a more open framework. And that's not to say that you can't have accountability pieces in there. I think some of the work that we've been doing with Durham sort of highlights that there is a really good balance you can strike between having expectations and accountabilities, but also a flexibility that things will change and the needs will change. Community is a living, breathing thing. And so I think, to have that as a starting place, I think helps to create a more fluid sort of framework.
I mean, tying into the next question, we know that getting multiple stakeholders together at any point can be challenging. So framework, some sort of framework, an evolving, flexible framework seems to be key. Is there anything else that you've noticed that has been, instrumental in setting up successful partnerships and bringing different community partners together?
Yeah, I can start us off there. I think once you have established trust, which I think my colleagues here have rightly pointed out is a necessary vital ingredient and does take time. But I think once you've established that, it needs to be cared for and ongoing. So I think that's the first thing. And secondly, I think to openly discuss, document, and return back to the barriers that keep people from participating. So I think having really open conversations about what might be keeping people from participating in a way that's going to be meaningful for them. We can't assume always that we know what people want out of a partnership. I think having really open dialogue about what's going to be most mutually beneficial and what are the possible barriers to achieving that. And then, the flip side of that, or I suppose the continuum of that, is then looking at that barrier and seeing, okay, so what mechanism within that framework can we build in to mitigate or, hopefully remove that barrier? So I think those are sort of two really good starting places.
Awesome. You want to jump in there?
I just echo the sort of the shared sort of future. I think that becomes really key. You can sort of really kind of get people organized around that.
The piece that I was going to add was, thinking about partners and who comes to the table. And it's really important that everyone can see themselves in the partnership and they know why they're there and what they want to get out of it. And that sometimes it's okay for folks to say, I'm just not there yet. I'm not ready. I want to see what you can accomplish and where you're going to go, and give me time to get my ducks in a row before I come to the table with you. I think that's okay too. It's important to be able to, hone those partnerships and to move forward with the willing, because it's really, really difficult when you have people at the table who are there, but they don't really want to be there. So that's something that we've learned a lot over the last little while, because, in municipal government, and especially at the county level, everything we do is in partnership. Like, I'm trying to think of things that we have done on our own, and I honestly can't think of something in the last several years that we have done completely by ourselves within our own department without any other people or voices at the table. And I just don't think that's realistic. So, it's nice to be able to figure out kind of where everybody is in the phases and the steps of where they want to go, and bring people when they're ready.
You mentioned something, and I'm curious of your thought on this. You said it's hard to move forward when there's someone at the table who doesn't want to be there. What do you do when there's someone at the table who doesn't want to be there, but they're there? So, and then you come back the next meeting, and they're still there. So how have you handled that, or hypothetically, how might you handle that based on, Savanna, you've got the mic, I apologize, when I asked that one. But that's something I know I've encountered, whether it's within my organization or partnering. Usually it's me. No, I'm just joking. But we have those situations where there's someone at the table, they don't want to be there for whatever reason, and they're not maybe a direct report, because in an organizational, you all have a chat with your manager and but these are partners. These are people who are choosing, or someone in their organization is choosing for them to be there. How have you handled that, or seen it handled well, maybe by someone else, when there's someone at the table who doesn't want to be there, or heels are dug in?
Well, if anyone has any ideas, please let me know. But I think it's also our responsibility to always be bigger people, and to have faith, and to be optimistic, and realize that, eventually we're going to get there. So it's okay. And maybe that person or that group, they just need time to understand and to absorb and to see, and then eventually we'll get there. There are very few instances where, at the end of the day, we haven't got to where we want to go, but something that maybe should have taken a couple months, maybe takes a couple years, but we will get there eventually. But if anyone does have anything to share of how we get there faster, please let me know.
There's some lunchtime conversation there.
Yeah, just a few thoughts. And I would echo what Savanna said. I mean, a lot of this is a journey. And I think we do have to kind of see it that way. And I know over, the period of time we've been working on things here, sometimes it's years, not months. And so there's that part of it. But thinking back to a prior life, and when I worked in a private sector company, they did basically have a saying that you either change the people or you change the people. And I think I think in essence that can be done very kindly. It is people need an opportunity to kind of grow, and if it's just clear that they're uncomfortable in that role and that, then I think we're doing both them a favor and the group to have that conversation. And would you like to be swapped out? And we may need to do that, because in a lot of what we do here, you do have to be pretty collaborative in nature, and you have to roll with how things happen. And so that takes a certain type of personality, I think, in all of that. So, team selection, member selection becomes an important, I think, consideration all the way around.
Oh, it's harsh. It's true. Harsh but true. Yeah, I mean, I echo your suggestions, and I think each scenario calls for probably a different response depending on the group and the relationships. How long has the partnership been going on? I think something else, just to kind of circle back to where we started, just the people piece, is that I think sometimes we I think we have a bigger payoff if we call people in as opposed to calling people out, especially in a group or a partnership setting. So, I think having a one-on-one conversation with someone, because who knows what's going on in people's lives, both personally and professionally. So I think to sort of return to that place of just being human together and finding out, are they getting what they need from the partnership, returning to the original vision and goals and that vision for the future, as you said, Chris. And so really sort of bringing them into a deeper conversation about, are you getting what you need? And is there something else that we can be doing that would energize you, fill your bucket, and if that doesn't work, then maybe we revert to Chris's plan.
It wasn't that much. I agree. There's a process to go through.
That wasn't the first step.
Yeah, no.
The door was open last time I joined.
Changed a lot.
So in a similar vein, and also new to the list of questions, what I'm curious about, we talked about trust and building trust. Again, partnership dynamics. You don't necessarily have the time invested as a peer working side by side, but you might be spending a lot of time. Have you found there's ways to build trust faster or deeper, so that there is that human connection? Because at the end of the day, we work with people, right? We don't work with the project, or we have a vision for the project. What have you found to be helpful ways of building trust?
Mine's pretty simple. I think it's just being there, showing up, and I think that accountability piece. I think when you commit to something and you show up and it's done, or you've done your best, I think that's meaningful to people. It shows that you're present, that you're committed. And I think patience, just being able to see that it's worth the investment of time to build that trust. We don't, most of us, meet the person whom we're going to spend the rest of our lives with and decide that at the first instance of meeting them. I mean, in some cases, but I think it's an investment in a relationship, and that's what we're here to do. And so that does take time.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, and I think, there's an intentionality there. Again, if you have that shared common future and you all realize that, then you all rely on each other to get things done, because that's how you're going to move ahead.
Yeah, and I think being, transparent and honest as we move through, and making sure that if we are going to be partners in something, we're actually going to do it together, and you don't come to the table and, oh, well, we did it for you, so you're just here. That's really important as well.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to jump to Chris to start this one off. What have you done to ensure that your projects are sustainable for the future? So we're building trust, we're casting the vision, we've got the frameworks, now we're talking long-term down the road. What creates sustainability in these projects?
Yeah, and again, a little bit of a hindsight thing here, but I think it works for what we're doing in this Durham RTDS, and kind of I kind of characterize it as I do think you have to go to the future. and then come back. And kind of what I mean by that is, and maybe this is a technology only thing, I don't know, because that's kind of the world I live in. But when we were first working with all of this stuff around electric connected automated vehicles, the question frequently was, what do I need to do to get ready for this? And, we look at each other and go, well, I don't really know. And I don't think there was really a good answer for that, because it's brand new technology, just like, AI and all that. But I think what is, maybe I'll use the term, a more productive question is, what sort of community do we want to have? And I think, in fact, there are pretty good answers. Communities have long-range plans, 20, 30 years out, land use, all of that. And if then you're clear on what sort of community you want, at least in this sort of space, you can say, what are the current challenges today? And really, that's how this Durham RTDS has really organized itself around supporting the electrification of smart transportation in Durham region. And we've sort of looked there and said, now, what are the current day-to-day challenges? And at least the technology, then what we're doing is we're putting those challenges out there to the technology community to try to get people to propose solutions. The ones that look reasonable get to do a demonstration project. I think that's a real win-win all the way around, because you get to make a challenge or a situation better. People who have to make public policy, regulatory, procurement decisions get to learn and start to really understand, about that technology and what needs to be done. And when you really think of it, we're now moving towards the future together. And I think then that builds, we're kind of addressing today's issues with things that will, I guess, build capability for the future. So I think that's an approach that we've done. And really the Durham RTDS then provides services to help get those demonstration projects rolling. And I think that's fundamentally how we're doing that to make ourselves relevant today and into the future.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome. Anyone else want to jump in on sustainability of projects?
Just quickly, I think on a really foundational level, I think having metrics, so long-term planning, also short-term, medium-term, I think identifying in an implementation plan of some kind, how you're being successful in your activities, in your outreach, in your actions. So I think having metrics that you can, document and report back to the community so that they can share in the successes and challenges and hopefully impacts.
Awesome. You don't have to.
No, that's okay.
We'll just wait until you do, but you don't have to.
I'm thinking we talk a lot about planning and our planning staff and our planning departments and what that looks like with economic development, and having that, going back to what you said about the vision and the official plan that we have and how much time our staff at Grey County spent going through that official plan process. Like, I think it was 3 years of engagement and going to fall fairs and to pie eating contests and to classrooms with Lego, trying to get all of the different perspectives and all of the different views of what we wanted our community to be so that we could set a collective vision. And that document's been in place for several years now. And everything that we do, there's a way that we can point back to it. So you constantly see yourself in that, and everything that all of the different groups and all the different communities and all of, our entrepreneurs are doing, it in one way or another ties back into that document. So it's almost like a confirmation that we are going the right direction, but we're only going there because the community collectively decided that's where we wanted to go.
Something that we haven't talked about too much, and I'm curious on your thoughts around, because I believe the three of you are representing academia and municipal, like government, and kind of bringing everybody together with the consultancy. What is because this is a recipe, we're in a food place, so we'll talk about the recipe of success is collaboration. We have academia, we have government, kind of connecting piece. Where does the private sector fit in to this, and what is it like partnering with the private sector, whether it's investment, whether it's strategy? There's a lot of ways, but we haven't talked a lot about private sector kind of collaborating on this space. So what is that? How has it been in your world, and what does it look like? Where do you see the value, and maybe how can private sector be more involved or aware? Because sometimes we're not thinking in the same way of collaborating and moving communities forward, because there's other stakeholders and maybe visions that a private sector might be working towards. But I know there are amazing private sector partners here in Durham and I'm sure in many places. So what does that world look like as we work with private sector to accomplish these goals?
Sure, I can start with that. We spend a lot of time working with the private sector. I would say the majority of our time is spent working with our businesses in the community who represent that group, and they're brilliant and they have so many ideas and they like to move fast. So we're often playing catch up, given the policies and procedures that we work in. But they're also patient, and they realize that if we can do it together, we're going to have a much better kind of bang for our buck and a better impact on the community. And they also are realizing that the work that we do is helping their employees and helping the people who they're able to attract and retain want to be part of the community, because there's a reason why they're here. In Grey County specifically, we talk a lot about the entrepreneurial spirit that runs through the county, and we really are made up of 70% of our businesses are small businesses and sole proprietors, and I think that's really important because there's something that comes out of that entrepreneurial spirit that then applies into everything that everybody's doing, and we try to absorb it as much as we can at the government level. But if we're not working with our private sector, we would miss that. So we always call it boots on the ground. We like to be out. We can't do economic development from our desks. We need to be in the community, listening all the time and facilitating those connections. And it's also really surprising when you go into the private sector realizing that they are so focused on what they're doing that they have no idea what their neighbor's doing. So it's our job to be listening to both and realizing, if you just came to the table and worked together, or here's an opportunity, that's where economic development can fit in.
I love that. Chris, before we get to you, I want to put Savanna on the spot. I'm just curious, in hindsight, a success story where you had maybe a private sector partner that was not fun to deal with. They were a big pain, bringing more challenges, maybe the speed or the vision, but something happened, a light bulb went off, and they're like, they got it now. Now they're one of your biggest advocates, they're big fans. Have you experienced kind of that change, and can you think of what it was that helped that shift happen for that team or that individual? That company? Won't say individual. And maybe not. Maybe there's been kind of like a great momentum, but I was curious and open it up. But I love those stories where you've dealt with it for 6 years, and then finally, in hindsight, it was that overnight success that everyone else sees. But you're like, oh yeah, we've worked with them, and it was a journey. But when they realized this or something, I don't know. Just throwing it out there on the spot?
So I can't think of an example like that, but I can talk a little bit about kind of the process that it takes where people do think, something just happened overnight. Like with Launchpad Youth Activity Technology Center, that was something that I worked on when I was in the town of Hanover. And I spent 3 years doing research and planning and engaging and working behind the scenes trying to figure out what it is that would work for the community. And then we presented it, and poof, it was there, and everyone thought, oh my goodness, that happened so fast. How did we get here? But it's because we kept all of that research and that the pain work hidden, because we didn't need to pull people into that. We needed them to get excited about something. So I think sometimes it's knowing when we need to do that behind the scenes work and when it's time to go public and pull others in. It's definitely a phase thing, but I'll keep thinking, well, maybe.
No, I would wholeheartedly agree with everything you've said. And I think, to me, what resonates and what Savanna you said is it's the 30-year overnight success, right? That's generally how it happens. I mean, structurally, you might have things happening that might change things fairly quickly. But I would say in a lot of our work with the private sector, really, I think key things are to really understand each other's business models. Frequently, we start to work with each other, and as you said, the private sector operates differently. They want to do things quickly. They have different decision making, and they look at us and they frequently do not understand what an academic institution or what a government institution needs to go through, what our governance structures are and things like that. And it's very helpful to kind of, sometimes we have to sit down and go, look, it's not because I don't want to. It's this is my business model. These are the structures. These are the constraints that I actually have to work with. And then as people start to understand all of that, I think that's where those real collaborative juices start to come together, because then, as you said, the ideas come out of the private sector like crazy. It's like, could we do something like this? It's like, yes, maybe we could do that. That would be very cool to do. And I think that's kind of how that evolves for the most part.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think creating that opportunity for those collisions, right? And I think that is such an important role that, really both municipalities, regions, post-secondaries can serve, and that is creating that opportunity for industry to come together and have conversations about their challenges, finding those universal challenges that maybe a particular company has found a way past, and that learning can be taken by someone else. I think we assume that folks are competitors to the death. And of course, in the private sector, competition is expected and normal. But I think, I was in a stakeholder call just last week with some folks in the region of Niagara. And, there were two folks who were in the agricultural sector, different industries. And if I could have recorded it, I could play it now for you to just show the impact of two people who knew each other tangentially, but were able to have a conversation about some really tough issues that they're facing in their businesses. And it's just about creating that opportunity for folks to come together. I think that that's a big role that we can play in helping to facilitate those conversations.
You mean our competitor, the region of Niagara? Sorry, a private sector joke. Unrelated to private sector, what would you say, and we'll kind of do a rapid fire, what would you say is your biggest hurdle to overcome when bringing multiple partnerships together?
Okay, rapid fire. I think we have talked about these, but I'll just reiterate. So I think trust, for sure, communication, I think capacity, so everyone is working all the time. And so I feel like, making sure that people are okay and have the capacity to do this work. I think those are the three challenges.
Yeah, I think just quickly, it's maybe now seeing this as a framework is to really use something like that to get to where that sweet spot of collaboration is most quickly, instead of just kind of letting it grow organically. We have to be now quite intentional about, this is what we need to do. How can we get there? And does everyone really understand what the constraints are? I would say is kind of key.
Yeah, I think it really is the capacity, the time sometimes that it takes to get things done, and building that shared understanding. Like when I think of Gray, we are a huge geography. So what happens in one corner doesn't really impact or apply to somebody in the other corner, but they still have shared issues that they don't realize they're sharing. So sometimes I think that's a barrier.
Awesome. And then I guess finally, we can open it up if we have a bit of time for questions as well. What would be your piece of advice to other folks working on bringing multiple partners together to accomplish awesome stuff?
I think patience, it is so worth it. The things that you can accomplish when you bring all of the different perspectives and all of the different expertise to the table, I think it's something that we can be really proud of, and you see amazing things happen, and the community develops and goes in directions that we didn't even realize when we went into something. So I think, it really is just having that vision for the future and being willing to take the time to get there, and you'll be so proud when you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. And building on that is, again, be intentional about it. I think create some sort of forum where those partners can get together on a regular basis, interact, talk, and then they build that know, like, trust, and then the themes and areas for collaboration, I think, come out of that.
I second patience. Yeah, I think we need to be able to be patient with ourselves, with our partners, and be willing to put in the time.
Awesome. Do you have any questions from you folks in the audience there? Anything specific? All right, I see one at the back and then one at the front. We didn't think this through, though, how you're going to ask your question, so. Thank you, Allison.
No problem. I would say Frank can probably yell.
Okay.
And I'm a Rotarian, Mr. Henry's a Rotarian, our mayor's a Rotarian, and I kept thinking, what is your definition of this partnership? As an angel investor, sometimes a partnership, it's like, does your wife know you're married? Because I'm not sure if you do have a partnership. If I take my Rotary, it starts with, is it the truth? And it's a lot of things you're saying. Will it build goodwill? Will it build friendship? And is it beneficial to all? That's my definition. I'd be curious to, what is your definition of a true partnership? Because it's kind of a loose word, especially when people are raising capital. They seem to have a partnership with people that don't really have a partnership. Please, thank you.
But just to recap for anyone watching, the question, let me know if I get it right, but essentially, what is the definition of partnership, especially when you have different people involved raising capital? Everyone has different interests involved, and so how do you define partnership?
Right, okay, thanks. And Frank, this is not a loaded question, I hope, because we know Frank. Okay, good stuff. Yeah, I think that know, like, and trust is really there, in terms of we know each other, we like, we trust in terms of what we're going to do as we kind of move forward, whatever it might be. So that's, I guess, my short answer on that.
I'm thinking for us, it really is shared vision and commitment to be at the table and to work together and to get somewhere. And if that path changes as you're working together, that's okay. But it's still, making sure that that commitment is there and that everybody wants to win together at the end of the day.
Peter, did you have a question? You had your hand up. Oh, okay.
We did have one more question at the front here. Oh, and the second. All right.
The comment. One of the most insightful things I ever heard about trust was came from the president of IBM University. One of the most insightful things I ever heard about trust came from the president of IBM University. He said that we all start thinking that we're going to walk this and people are going to trust each other. You have to start from the assumption that they're not. And you need to build the trust through a bunch of small acts of commitment. Just a very tactical thing, but it never, because he said basically nothing will happen in your partnership until everybody trusts everybody and their organizations trust each other. I thought it was amazing.
Thank you. Question, sir? Double questions. Here, I'll pass this over.
I'd just like to add that the elemental constituency of trust is one, the vision, but most importantly, it is come together with a sense of shared values about what it is you're here to accomplish. Because if you don't have shared values, you won't advance towards the vision.
Wonderful, thank you.
We have a problem in Canada with what I call partnerships. Education or academia, I work a lot on municipal partnerships, etc. And almost all of them end up with city councils, municipal governments, wanting 100% control, very little bending. We have an unusual 5G network in this country. We have a monopoly in providing the services, and we're all aware of it. We do not have what is called broadband up in the corner. I know this is an international event, but we're sitting right here in this country, and you are involved with municipal leaders. What are you doing, or how are you? Because industry is very untrustworthy at the moment. We're all aware of it. Academia is desperately trying to drive it. And municipal governments are all trying to make this all happen. And it is something I think we all have to understand in Canada, that we are not moving at the same speed as other countries of the world. The United States is a little better, but in a lot of cases not all that great. Where in other countries, as we all aware, have embraced it. And I think we all have to realize that going forward.
Thank you. And I do think there's probably pockets, as I'm hearing from the panel up here, that are shifting some of the, what is happening. It's a big boulder to push, because there's a lot of historic, there's a lot of, I guess, kind of, it's just been normal to function, and there's the control, power, money components that are there. And the stories that I hear from this panel and from the ICF and the things that are happening, it gives me hope that there is a possibility to change from kind of the way that we have been doing things. But it's a great point. Final question. All right. Well, on that note, just want a couple things that really stuck out to me. Savanna, thank you for being on the spot. Also, I love the point that you made about connecting the neighbors, connecting the businesses. They don't even know, they're so head down. I see that in our business, that we forget that we can just put our head up for air and connect with what is happening, that we actually, can know, like, and trust the businesses, whether they're competitors or different industries, and work together. Also, the understanding the business models. Whether it's within industry or across academia and municipal government, that is huge. Even within departments within our organization, we've got customer care, we've got sales. Sales doesn't work the same as software development. They function very differently, and I don't think we're alone in how that happens. So understanding the rhythms and the governance and the constraints of the partners, to me, that was a big aha moment. So thank you for sharing that. And then also, Tara, calling people in instead of calling people out. I thought that was kind of a good way to wrap up. I mean, besides kicking them out, which is also a good way to approach it. But that idea, kind of bringing it full circle from where we had Grandma Kim kicking us off this morning and welcoming and reminding us, as we honor the past, as we move forward. This is a really good reminder that we call people in instead of calling people out, so that we can move forward together. So I'd like to thank the panelists, Savanna, Chris, Tara. Thank you for your wisdom, your experience, and sharing your time with us this morning. Thank you.